Hi, my name is Meng Yuan, and today I'm presenting a work cooperated with my supervisors, Pauline and Justin Zobel. The title is Document Clustering versus Topic Modeling, a case study. So a very challenging question in IR is to learn about the scope of a collection when we have an unknown collection. And there are many forms of collection descriptions. For example, a very simple collection description could be a distribution of topics or themes within a collection. And when we have an annual collection, there are many questions we may want to ask before we use it. For example, what queries can I pose with this collection? Or if I have an information need, will this collection of my interest at all? Or how can I use the collection for a specific task? And by learning the scope of a collection, it may help us to answer those questions. There are two commonly used approaches to describe a collection. And the first one is document clustering, and the second one is topic modeling. So with the size of collections we are using today, because they are very large, usually we start with k-means clustering or other algorithms derived from k-means. So I'm going to introduce k-means quickly. In k-means clustering, we start by choosing the number of clusters, and then we project the vectorized documents in higher dimensional space. So we end up with partitions or sets of documents. And on the other hand, the topic modeling, which does totally differently. This is LDA model, which is the one we are using in our experiments. So in LDA topic modeling, what we get after we run the algorithm are two distributions. The first one is the distribution of terms over topics, where we have the words from vocabulary of the collection, and then we compute the weight, or we call them the probability of the word in each of the topics, sorry. And the second distribution is the topics mixture distribution over documents. So we assume that in each of the documents, we have all topics, but the only difference is the weight for each topics are different. Therefore, we say there are all words in all topics, and all topics are in all documents. The only difference between each topic is in the weight of the terms. And to compare clustering with topic models, what they generate or what they describe are very different in terms of collections. For document clustering, we are doing a completely unsupervised process, which we start by using a collection, and then we end up with partitions of the collection. But for topic models, it is a probabilistic approach. So what we get is not partitions of documents, but instead we have distributions or probabilities over terms and over documents. And in addition to that, the topic modeling can also be used to help describe clusters in many information retrieval tasks. And they can also be used to improve the performance of document clustering. But it doesn't mean that topic modeling is a more advanced approach, or it can be a richer document collection descriptor if we compare it with document clustering. And in fact, our recent research has already shown that document clustering, even though it may generate different clusters every time, it's still quite stable and can be descriptive as well. So this figure is from a paper we published 2 weeks ago. The heat map is a comparison of 10 runs of k-means clustering. So we are comparing them by the similarity score. And you can see almost all the pairs lies between orange and the red. So it's not completely identical, but they are very similar largely. So it is the clustering is generating stable clusters. And how can these stable clusters be used to describe contents? Well, we proposed this measure called collection coverage, which is the size of relevant clusters to a query divided by the size of the whole collection. So if the coverage is small, that means the clusters are very effective at describing relevant documents to a query. And in this figure, every dot is a track topic, and we collected the relevant documents to each of the topics. So some topics have many relevant documents, but some of them have only a few. And the blue colored dot are from an actual k-means run, and the orange crosses are from a random partitioning. So randomly, when we have more documents, because the partitions are random, these documents will lie in each partitions equally. But in fact, the actual k-means clustering generates something much more meaningful, because no matter how many relevant documents we have, we can almost find all of them within 20% of the collection. And to use these clusters as a content descriptor for an unknown collection, we usually use the informations of centroid. And in terms of document clustering, we don't have an actual centroid, but what we have are the documents near the center. So we use the central document zone to represent the content of a cluster. But we still don't have evidence to say that these centroid documents are more representative and descriptive than other documents within the clusters. So we have two ways to generate keywords from clusters. The first one is to use all documents within a cluster. And then we sort the terms by their frequency, and we call them the cluster terms. The second method is to use the documents near the centroid only, for example, 10 documents or 20 documents, and then we call them the central terms. And the keywords for a topic is computed from the term topic distribution described previously. So for each topic, we order the terms by their weight, and we choose the top terms as the topic terms. And we are interested in how the clusters align with the topics. So for each document in a collection, we can give them a cluster label, which is the membership of a clustering. And we also generate a topic label for each of the documents. The topic label is got from the topic with the highest weight of the document from the second distribution. And then we would like to compute the distribution of topics for each of the cluster. In this comparison, the data set we use is the Wall Street Journal collection. And there are around 98,000 documents in total. We also split it into subsets by the lengths of the documents, but the actual result doesn't show much difference. So we are only presenting the results for the whole collection. And if you're interested in the results for the partitions, please read our paper. And this is the result for the distribution of topics per cluster. Each bar of this figure represents a cluster, and the colored segments are topics. We have the x-axis as the percentage of topics, so it starts from 0% to 100%. And the y-axis represents the clusters. Within the bracket, we have the cluster size, which are the number of documents. And this result is very impressive because in almost all clusters, we can identify one or two dominant topics. Right? Even though the topics are latent, even though we can't interpret what they mean, but we know that in these clusters, there has a topic, there has a theme that dominates the whole cluster. And we can use it to describe the clusters. On the other hand, how do the topics align with clusters? Well, we've seen that how the clusters align with topics from the bar chart, and there are already other practices on using topic modeling to support clustering. But we are also interested in whether the clusters can be used to describe topics. And what we did is to first match each cluster with its dominant topic. So for example, cluster 19 is mapped with topic 3 because this is a dominant topic. And then we compare the keywords for each of the cluster topic pair. And this is very surprising because we have 3 columns of keywords from the cluster terms and then the topic terms, and we also have the terms from the centroid. And the first observation is for the cluster terms and the topic terms, they are almost identical to each other. And even the order of the terms are very similar. For example, the pair cluster 3 and topic 4, the first word is quarter, right? And in the topic, it's also quarter. And by simply looking at these terms, we can have a very initial, essential idea of what this cluster is about. And we can also see that the topics is using very similar terms compared to the clusters. So the clusters can help us to understand more about the topics. But the second observation is that when we use the keywords collected from the centroid documents, they seem irrelevant to the topics. And they seem very different from the keywords generated from the whole clusters at all. So if we are going to use clustering for document description, then maybe the documents near the centroid are not as descriptive and representative as we believed. And this is different from our intuition. So if we are going to use it, we start with the whole clusters. That would be a better choice. So in conclusion, we have shown from both directions that the clusters can be aligned with topics and the topics can be aligned with clusters by using the distribution of topics and by using the keywords generated from the clusters. And we also need to notice that this is just an initial exploration. We are not turning the parameters precisely. We're just using the simplest untrained models as the simplest k-means and the simplest untrained LDA topic modeling. And they both generate very similar informations as collection descriptors, even though their mechanism are very different fundamentally. And the third conclusion is that the documents near the centroid are very limited at describing the content of a cluster if we use the topics as a reference. And this is very different from our intuition. So what's next? The next thing we will do is first, of course, to generalize the case study by two means. We will explore other quantitative methods to visualize the alignment between topics and clusters, of course. And we will also use other collections with different sizes and types of documents. And then we will explore how these comparison techniques can be used to enhance each other, and how these techniques can be used to describe classes with topics, and how we can use them to explain topics with clusters. And then, if possible, we will examine how we can use these visualized representations these tools generate to support users with their search on an unknown collection. And that's pretty much everything I'd like to say today. And thank you for your listening. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.